Where are you at with this game? Where are you at with this series?
I mean, it's still all about confidence to me. It's what Wes and I talked about coming off of Game 3, and I think a lot of the elements that have flipped can kind of be traced back to that, and the confidence shift that we've seen from Denver being on their back foot to being on their front foot, somehow doing this for both teams in the absolute wrong arena. I'm not really sure how we got there, but you just look at the way that Jokic was aggressive as a scorer tonight and the way that opened up so much for what the Nuggets want to do on the offensive end. He had 35 points, 15 of 26 from the field, started it out early with, I want to say, 8 points in the first quarter, if I'm not mistaken, maybe more. And with that mentality from him of reading the help as a guy looking to drive to the basket and score the ball, that just started to open up a lot of other things. And I think Aaron Gordon on the other end, what he's done in games 3 and 4, I think goes a long way toward disrupting what Karl-Anthony Towns has been able to do on the offensive end. Just kind of playing Cat physically, and even though he's smaller than him, just adulting him around.
Cat, who was good as a driver before this series, I think even in parts of the series earlier, has not, like, he looks like he's never driven to the basket before in some of these moments. He looks uncoordinated, uncomfortable. He's flailing around, and he's not even really getting bumped that hard. It's just like there's a guy who's standing his ground on him, and he's just kind of fading away. It's light work from Towns, and not in the fun way. It's pretty light.
Yeah, I mean, you're right that he's not getting pushed off of his spots in order to be missing those shots. I think you just watch Gordon off the ball with Towns, pre-catch, pre-screen. He's setting the tone physically and not allowing Towns to be the guy to do that. You combine that with Jamal Murray making shots. You combine that with the way that they've treated guys like Jaden McDaniels as a non-threat on the offensive end and dared him to shoot, dared him to beat them, whereas in the first round you were seeing the Suns close out to that guy like he's a 5-alarm fire as a shooter. And it's just all these little ingredients that have laid the foundation for this confidence flip where now you're watching these games and it's very clear the Nuggets have the upper hand.
The other little thing that Denver did in this game that I love, that I thought was really ingenious game planning, was they're running these soft traps on like Mike Conley or whoever the ball handler is on the perimeter, whatever side Nickeil Alexander-Walker is on. So if he's in the corner, they're trapping that soft trap on that side, trying to funnel the ball to Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker is either flailing up a bad three or he's giving the ball up right away, and it's disrupting any rhythm. It is not even super aggressive. It is just like dictating the ball to a spot they want it to go. And if Nickeil Alexander-Walker hits a tough corner three, you're like, great, fine, congratulations. But he's panicking, and the Wolves in general right now are, to your point about confidence, I thought, except for Ant, everyone looked very rushed. Even Mike Conley, one of the most composed players in the league, is rushing three-pointers in transition at times. And it's like, it's all out of sorts for them right now.
Well, you mentioned like it's not any sort of overly aggressive thing. I don't think Denver's defense, even at its best, really is. It's just
no, it's not
positionally sound, right? So it's like the shots that are going to be taken by the opponent, they're kind of predetermined that Denver's okay with that. That's what their defense is going to do. They're going to send the ball, like you're saying, where they want it. They're going to have a guy with the ball. Okay, either you're going to drive or you're going to have to take the pull-up three, or you're going to have to pass it to this exact person, and we're not going to let the opponent take a lot of threes that are just wide open and all that kind of stuff. And that's really all it takes, especially, again, with a team that they looked like world beaters in the first round. They had the best offensive rating in the first round, but I think we know from a talent standpoint they are still exploitable, and they looked like it. They have looked like it in the past two games, and I mean that's why I mentioned the Gordon Towns matchup as the key of that, the head of the snake. If Towns had a better game, this looks a lot different. He's the second best offensive player on this team, but if that's not working, it starts to get ugly in a hurry. And I think Conley's a great shout too. Just where are they getting it? I mean, Anthony Edwards, who I think we should give a little more credit to Denver before we jump too quickly to that dude, but he's doing everything he can. Everything else feels like it's kind of hit or miss with the Minnesota Timberwolves right now.
Yeah, and some of this stuff also I think is self-inflicted. We were texting you, Wes, and I during this game, Brendan, and you had a point that I thought really summed up the second quarter for this game, which was for a stretch. I don't know exactly how many minutes, but it felt like a long, impactful stretch. The Wolves' three best players are off the floor, and the Nuggets are going to run. At that point in this moment, if it's the regular season, if it's mid-February, you're playing the Hornets, whatever, I don't really give a shit if you're not going to put your three best guys back on the floor to stop that run. But here, in a game I would argue you probably not need to win, but should really be going all out to win if you're Minnesota, to get a 3-1 lead, to protect home court, to take back control of the series. They didn't do that. Chris Finch did not elect to do that. They let this ride out way too long, and Denver gets the lead. And then when Denver gets ahead of you, and they are humming, they are now moving side to side, they are comfortable, they are flowing, Christian Brown's giving them great minutes, all of this stuff. Murray got absolutely on fire to start the second half after he hits the half-court heave at the end of the first, and then the second half comes out absolutely flamethrowers after a very quiet start to the game. When Denver is rolling like this and they are humming, you are swimming upriver against the current trying to come back against them. If you are 10 points down, it might as well be 15. It might as well be 18. It does not matter. They are because of how they play and how precise they are, you have to be like near perfect to come back against them. And Minnesota was, except for Ant, was like nowhere close to that standard you kind of have to be at.
Yeah, it's the same even as what we saw with the Lakers, right? I mean, in that case, it was these early leads by LA where Denver slowly chipped away and then overtook it, and then you saw the fourth quarters really be where the Lakers were panicking. But Denver's going to make their run. I mean, that's really the bottom line. No matter if you're ahead or they're ahead or whatever, you're not going to overwhelm them. You're not going to surprise them or force them into mistakes. I mean, game two already feels like an aberration, right? Where they just crumpled. That's not normal for them. So, yeah, I think that run at the end of the first quarter, they go on a 12-0 run, like you mentioned, Chris, from about 4 minutes left to about 1 minute left in the quarter. Cat was 0 of 7 in the first quarter, which contributed a lot to that.
He got a nice Zach Lowe, like Anthony Edwards rejuvenated Cat piece, and then he's been dog shit for 2 straight games. Tough look.
Then they opened the second quarter with Conley, NAW, Slow-Mo, McDaniels, and Naz Reid, a lineup that up until that point in the postseason had never played a minute together. As you mentioned, Cat, Gobert, Ant, all on the bench. Ant did have 2 fouls, so okay, but still. And Cat sucked, so I guess it's like, can you really fault him for benching the guys who aren't playing great? Foul trouble and missing shots.
I think I would have just played Ant. Is the thing. I understand the 2 fouls. I think it's worth the risk. It is worth the dice roll.
He also played 45 out of 48 minutes in this game. So
Josh Hart saying
that's to the same point we were making the other direction, right? Where it's like, how much can he really do? Yeah, Josh Hart. It's light work.
Yeah, Josh Hart's like, play 48, coward. Like, it's fine.
Yeah,
it's great.
So then Denver continues their run, 12-2 run. They're quickly up 15, and altogether, I believe it was a 24-4 run. Mm-hmm. They did end up making their own. They pushed back, the Wolves did, with a huge lineup with McDaniels at the 2 and all 3 of their bigs on the court, where they were +1 in about 3 minutes with that lineup out there. So it's hard for me to overly criticize Chris Finch for trying stuff when some of the stuff he tried did work. Like, I'm not going to shred him for it. But I really think, to maybe flip it to the Wolves side even more, Chris, we talked about Towns. We can get to Ant. But this was an awful Rudy Gobert offensive game.
Awful.
And that was such a big ingredient for them through their first 6 playoff games, is him, especially in the pocket on the short roll, scoring, getting into those quick kind of post-up situations, finishing off of one dribble into a bucket, or finding a shooter to kick out to, making those quick decisions, having a little more range and a little more ability in space in those quick decision types of moments. He has 5 turnovers in this game, and he's 5 of 9 from the free throw line, including a couple misses in one trip in the fourth quarter that would have cut the lead to 9. Just ugly. So this really, in a lot of ways, I mean, shout out Naz Reid, I guess, but this was an Ant and nothing else game on the offensive end for Minnesota.
Gobert looked hesitant in this game, which has never made sense to me why he feels like he needs to be hesitant on offense. It's kind of the weird thing with him, right? If you're Rudy Gobert, the only player you should be really like worried about contesting you, it would be like a clone of yourself.
I mean, he's hesitant because he doesn't have the skill level to do what he knows he needs to do. I mean, it's like, yeah, nobody can block his shot, but is he coordinated enough to catch the ball consistently against good defense, even if it's somebody an inch shorter than him or 2 inches longer wingspan-wise, and finish through that? No, so he's in his head about it. I mean, I think that's what's going on there.
That and the free throws, I'm sure, is nagging in the back of his head. It's like, do I want to be on the free throw line? I mean, he took the most free throws on the team in this game for the Wolves. He took 9 free throws. That's not and got to 8, so close. But when Rudy Gobert is taking the most free throws on the team for you, that's a weird place to be if you're Minnesota as well. And he's obviously not giving you much else. It also just, I think, Brendan, tell me if you think this is fair or not. I think Gobert looks more comfortable on offense when it's him and Towns, or it's him and like Naz Reid. I think when one of those guys is absolutely kind of rolling and the defense has to more react to those guys, his job becomes so simple that it just gets presented to him. When that doesn't happen, I think that exasperates everything that goes wrong with him on the offensive end. And that, to me, was kind of this game for Gobert in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, when the spot-up shooters aren't making shots, there's just going to be less space, right? I mean, I think Michael Porter Jr. on the defensive end tonight had a really, really strong game as the kind of bouncy, reading the floor, low-man helper, where he's helping off of oftentimes decent shooters, whether that's McDaniels or whoever it might be, even Naz Reid, Alexander Walker, whatever. But he, I think, is starting to kind of figure out how to take that 1/2 step, put one hand in Gobert's face, whatever, in those moments. So he deserves credit for it. I think Jokic was kind of getting a body on the roll man a little earlier, or just disrupting the rhythm of that stuff too. I mean, just playing harder is a lot of what we're talking about on Denver's defensive side. They just weren't putting effort forth in games 1 and 2 very much. In this game and last game they did. So yeah, I think it feels like this series is just returning back to kind of a stasis that I think is how we expected it to look from the beginning. And it took a while to get here, but like Denver winning by 8 and out executing, and some of these offensive warts popping up for the Wolves, like if you had transported this conversation pre-game 1, Chris, I think it would have been like, well, yeah, that all makes sense. Towns had a wild game. Gobert wasn't great on offense, and Ant was the only guy who could consistently score. Meanwhile, Denver's an execution machine and get an early lead and don't give it up. It's like, sounds right.
The Nuggets thing is this is simple, so I want to acknowledge that. But to your point, it's like playing hard, and then Jamal Murray has runs of making really hard shots that he's getting defended well, and it just doesn't matter. It's like, okay, I don't know what you're supposed to do at a certain point, It's like sometimes I just look at that and I'm like, that's the recipe of a team I don't know how you really beat. It's really hard to like beat that team, particularly when you do some of the things we've kind of got into that are self-inflicted and maybe just structurally kind of a problem for this Wolves team, even if it worked really well for them the first 2 games. Can we just hit on Murray for a second? Because we didn't cut our show just based on our schedule, didn't cover game 3. He was unbelievable in game 3, just like peppering everywhere, clearly out to prove a point. Slow in this game. I thought Minnesota did a great job early of being a little more intentional about denying him the ball, being up in his grill, McDaniels in particular, being very physical with him on defense. That guy gets the one heave, and it feels like his brain just like lights on fire and he's ready to go. In that third quarter, he's just like, you're like, sure, great. Jamal's being Jamal. Doesn't matter. You can't really defend him when he gets in this little weird zone. That guy fascinates me because he had a 19-8 game, not a huge night by any means, but I look at it and I think that was the second most important player on Denver, just like, amid everything. It's just like he's such a weird guy in this series because he's so bad the first 2 games, great in game 3. In this game, it's like 8 minutes of excellence, and it kind of outweighs everything else he is or is not doing.
Yeah, I don't want to take credit away from him, but I think it speaks more to the Nuggets as a team than just Murray just suddenly is making shots he didn't make. I think that the space he has to make those shots, who is guarding him and how tightly they're able to guard him, who's initiating the set, which increasingly has been Gordon in games 3 and 4, rather than Jokic or Murray in terms of just walking or running the ball up and initiating. They've put the ball in Gordon's hands early so that Gobert is either having to meet him and already kind of out of his comfort zone, more on the perimeter to start a set, or like you saw at times around midway through the first quarter, they actually put Ant on Gordon as a panic adjustment off of that because Gordon's have been having so much success doing it, and they actually put, for a possession or two at that point, just to disrupt, they put Rudy on Porter Jr. So yeah. I think a lot of the things that the Nuggets have been able to adjust, just playing faster, straight up, has been a big part of that, has all allowed Murray to get space, get rhythm, get the timing that he just is so dependent on, whereas in those first couple games, he was just having to chuck stuff up over guys that had 6 inches on him too often late in the clock and everything else. The other part, though, to kind of come full circle on the confidence, Reggie Jackson and Justin Holiday shooting 5 of 8 from 3.
Big.
I mean, that like, you hate to boil it down too much, but like it's kind of, I don't want to say the game, but like that's a huge thing.
That and Brown. I thought Brown's
Alexander Walker and McDaniels can't make their buckets, Yeah, and Brown was 1 of 1 and scored off, attacking closeouts, got to the line, did his thing.
Well, and Brent, I don't know if you heard this, but he's they only mentioned it like once or twice, and we've only heard it once or twice. He's won. He won 3 straight high school championships. Yeah, 5 in a row for him. I don't know if you heard that.
So I guess that just means the Nuggets are going to win every title until he retires. That's pretty cool for them.
That's how this works. He should get a max contract. LeBron should trade for him. Like they don't need Trae Young or Donovan Mitchell. They need Christian Brown.
The winner of winners, baby.
Yeah, we have to hit on Ant though. I think before we move on from this game. He did everything he possibly could. 45 minutes, 6 of 25, 5-8 from 3. 5 assists, 3 turnovers, had a game-high 44. Everything that we said about the Wolves, Brendan, doesn't really apply to the game he had when everyone else, I think, was hesitant and maybe lacking confidence. That dude is not lacking confidence. That dude is not lacking... he has no fear for anything he's doing. It almost feels like at times the Wolves need to catch up to him and feed off of him more than they already do. It feels like in a game like this, just kind of following his lead even more intentionally would get them over some of these humps. Or at least I'd like to see what that would look like if they all just kind of could take 5% of Ant's Antness and inject it and figure it out.
I think you're giving a lot more credit to Anthony Edwards' energy and tenacity than his like freakish, insane basketball talent. That's what they don't have. That's what they need 5% of. But it's being better at the sport.
I just like watch him like go, and it's like you can tell even when he is rushing and trying to go, he is not like freaking out where he's like, oh, there's a like Mike Conley. This possession has seared into my brain in this game. Fourth quarter, they get a stop. They get an advantage because some Nuggets player is like down behind the play. Conley gets up to the other side of the court. He dribbles past like the top of the right wing towards in that kind of nebulous zone between the corner and the wing. He takes like a off balance ish contested 3 when if he had made a pass, they could have at least moved the ball and had the advantage. And instead he took a rush 3. Gobert got the offensive rebound, got fouled out of it, but he splits the free throws. You could have got a much better possession out of that. When Ant's in that situation, even if his playmaking, he's not like Luke or anything, but like in that spot, he's not going to freak out. He's going to understand what he's seeing and set it up as best for success, whether that's him driving, whether it's him spraying to a shooter. Like there just needs they need like the 5% more composure. Like they need that dial turned up, and Ant's the only one who plays composed. Cat played this game like he'd never been held a basketball in a playoff game before. Like I understand Ant's athletic ability is part of it because he can finish through guys. He had an amazing dunk in this game.
It's easy to be confident when you can do everything,
Yeah,
but I hear
so it's
the composure's a good word for it. Composure's a good word for it. I mean, I think Conley, all things considered, 9 assists, 0 turnovers, 15 and 9, no turnovers, a little bit inefficient, but they got a decent Conley game. I really do think Towns and Gobert and the shooters are to blame here. But yeah, I mean, look, Ant to me is at the level where he feels like the first guy I can remember since, I guess I would say, I mean, I don't know. We've been arguing about how to compare Ant there were too many days off, Chris, between games 2 and 3. We had a bunch of shit to just kind of rile ourselves up about. But
Yeah.
the whole Michael Jordan thing, whatever, I don't really have an opinion there. But I think he has been, in this playoff stretch especially, the closest thing to like Cleveland LeBron the last time that I can remember, in terms of when he is playing in space, his combination of reading the floor, shooting ability, and driving ability feels legitimately unstoppable. Like, I don't think there's really an answer for it unless you can, reconjure that era of Andre Iguodala again, and I'm not sure there's a defender like that in the NBA right now. There's nothing that Anthony Edwards nothing is stopping him. No coverage, no individual guy, no anything. Now, he's played 2 mediocre defenses, all things considered, in Phoenix and Denver. Be interesting to see if, he had to face like a really his own defense or something. But I don't know what you do with this guy. I mean, he's averaging like 30 plus for his playoff career now after what he's done this postseason. Like, this is just what it is. There's not much you can do. And if they give him even a little bit of help, like, this team can be awesome.